Welcome, dear listener. If you find peace in stories told slowly, with care, if you drift into dreams guided by soft voices and timeless worlds, then you're in the right place. This is a space for your rest, your calm, your imagination. I'm SmallCreek ASMR, and tonight I invite you to relax, settle in, and let yourself be carried away. If you enjoy this kind of storytelling, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more journeys like this, and share it with someone else who needs a little escape tonight. This is the story of Gandalf and the Last Flame of Valinor, a gentle, reflective tale set on the final night before a great departure. Now let us begin. The stars hang like ancient watchers in the sky, flickering with the quiet wisdom of countless ages. The sea, vast and black, laps gently against the stone and wood of the harbor. The air is still, touched with the scent of salt and old stories. The grey havens sleep in silence, save for the soft crackle of a fire just kindled on the edge of the dock. The flames are small but steady, curling upward, as if reaching for something, just beyond sight. An old man sits beside the fire, cloaked in grey, his staff resting against the wooden railing. His face is lined with the memory of many lifetimes. His beard, long and silver white, moves faintly with the breeze. He is not just any man. He is Mithrandir, Gandalf the Grey. And tonight, before he departs, he remembers. His fingers stretch toward the fire, palms open to its heat. He watches the flames for a long time before he speaks. I remember, he says softly. Before I was Gandalf, before this shape and name, I was someone else. He pauses, as though listening for something in the flicker of the fire. I was Olorin. The name drifts into the night, unfamiliar to most, yet filled with the echo of ancient gardens and starlit paths. In the gardens of Lorien I dwelled, he continues, in the land of the Valar, far to the west, before the sun and moon were kindled. I was a spirit of thought, of comfort. I did not command nor shout. I did not lead great armies. I walked in silence. I whispered to those who wandered in sorrow or doubt. I offered them hope, though I did not always know it. He leans back slowly, eyes raised to the stars. Their light is soft on his face. There is a memory older than words, he says. Older than stone, older than fire. It is the memory of music. Not the kind sung with mouths and breath, but music shaped from thought and woven with intention. It was the music of the Ainur, the great song that gave birth to the world. His voice remains low, smooth, barely louder than the wind. We sang it together, the Ainur, the holy ones. Our thoughts became melodies, and those melodies were given to Eru Ilúvatar. From them came form, from the harmonies came sky and sea and mountain. From the dissonance came the shadow. He draws his cloak more tightly around his shoulders, the fire warming his knees. There was one among us, the greatest of us all, Melkor. He sought his own melody, louder, deeper, different. He longed not to join the harmony, but to lead it, to bend it. His song was pride, and from his pride came the first discord. The fire crackles sharply, and he lowers his voice further. But even Melkor, in all his might, could not undo what had been sung. Eru wove even his rebellion into the greater symphony. And so, the world was born, not in perfection, but in beauty touched with shadow. His eyes close for a moment. The night deepens. Valinor, the blessed realm, he murmurs. Do you know its name? Do you feel its light? It lies across the sea, beyond the reach of mortal sails. There the trees once stood, Telperion and Laurelin, silver and gold. Their light bathed the world before the sun and moon. They do not shine anymore, not as they once did, but I remember them. Their glow was not heat, but serenity. It touched every leaf, every breeze, every breath. A long breath escapes him. He picks up a twig and places it in the fire. I walked those gardens. I spoke with the wise. I sat beneath Vana's blooms and wandered through the halls of Irmo. But it was with Nienna that I spent the most time. She taught through grief, through tears. Not the kind that break, but the kind that cleanse. His eyes open again, now reflecting the firelight. It was she who prepared me. When whispers of a shadow rising once more in Middle-earth came, it was she who understood. A darkness not of great armies, but of slow corruption, quiet hunger. He lifts his staff, tapping it gently against the ground. We were sent, 5 of us, not as lords, but as guides, in the shape of old men, bound by frailty. We were the Istari. I came as Gandalf, and I walked the lands of men, of elves, of dwarves and hobbits. I sought no throne, no tower. I walked where the need was greatest. I listened. I remembered. The flames burn low, steady and warm. The world changed, he says. Long had Sauron waited, the servant of Melkor. In time he rose again, took shape, forged rings, deceived kings. He pauses. But you know that tale, at least in part. The ring, the journey, the fellowship, the fire of Mount Doom. He smiles faintly. Yet you may not know what it cost. Not just in lives and battles, but in time, in the weight of years. Every goodbye, every fall, etched upon me. I remember each of them, and still, I would carry it all again. He looks to the horizon. Tonight, there is peace. No black wings in the sky, no cries in the dark, just the stars, and this fire, and the sea. He rests both hands on his staff. Soon, the ship will come. I will go back to the west, to Valinor, to the lands that do not age, but I do not go unchanged. I carry with me all that I have seen, all whom I have known. The fire dims. He watches it without moving. Do you know why I loved the hobbits? He asks, suddenly softer. Because they were simple, not in mind, but in heart. They knew joy, they knew sorrow, but they did not let it change them. They loved food and growing things and songs. They reminded me of what is worth saving. He rubs his hands together. I remember Bilbo's birthday, the fireworks, the laughter. I remember Frodo's silence, his burden. I remember Sam's courage. I remember Merry's cleverness, Pippin's light, and Aragorn's strength, born not of crown, but of humility. I remember Legolas's grace, Gimli's fire, Boromir's fall, Faramir's wisdom, Eowyn's quiet strength, and Galadriel's gaze. He closes his eyes. I remember. For a long while there is only the fire. Then he speaks again. There is a light that no darkness can touch. It does not blind, nor burn. It comforts. It reveals. That light is carried not in stars or flames, but in hearts and in stories. He smiles. If you are weary, rest. If your thoughts are heavy, let them go. The night is long, but not without end. There is always morning. There is always another shore. He stands slowly, with the fire behind him. My time here is finished, but yours is still unfolding. Remember what was good, and do not fear the path ahead. He turns toward the sea, where a white sail now gleams in the distance. Good night, he says, and thank you. And with that, he walks to the edge of the dock. The fire burns on, a last warm echo in the night. The fire burned gently, a low cradle of golden light that flickered like a heartbeat against the old wood of the dock. Gandalf sat in quiet contemplation, his eyes not on the flames, but fixed upon the sky, on a place beyond stars, beyond what eyes could see. His hands clasped together in his lap were still, but within him stirred the vast memory of ages. He inhaled softly, the salt of the sea brushing against the inside of his chest. Then he began to speak, not as one telling a story, but as one invoking something sacred. Before time, he said, before the first sound was sung into the darkness, there was only Ilúvatar. His voice was low and warm, like deep earth. He was the one, the first, the father of all. In his thought, he conceived the Ainur, the holy ones, and we, for I was one of them, were born not of flesh, not of form, but of music. The wizard's eyes gleamed with the distant glow of memory. We knew him not as you might know another. He was not a face nor a figure. He was will. He was flame and thought, calm and storm, and from him came the music that shaped all things. He raised a hand slowly, as if reaching for something invisible above. We sang. Together, we made the great music, the Ainulindale. It was not bound by instrument or voice, but was the very expression of being. The harmony of our spirits became melody. The melody became the song, and the song became the world. The words floated into the night like breath into water. I remember my part, Gandalf murmured. I remember the joy of that singing, the pure unfolding of a thought turned to harmony. No doubt, no pain, only purpose, only unity. The old wizard bowed his head. But then came Melkor. The name was spoken without hate, without fear, only the quiet echo of old sorrow. His thought moved apart from the rest. It sought its own shape, its own voice. Where there was harmony, he added dissonance. He twisted melody into something vast and dark and strange, and the song changed. A silence followed. The fire crackled. We were startled, at first, but Ilúvatar, he did not stop the music. Number, he wove Melkor's song into the whole. Where Melkor built fire, Ilúvatar gave it space. Where Melkor carved chasms, Ilúvatar filled them with echo and depth. And thus, from discord, came new form. Gandalf leaned forward, gazing at the embers. It was then that Ilúvatar revealed the vision of the world to us. Arda, he called it, the earth. And we saw it, not yet made, only shaped in the music. Oceans vast as eternity, mountains rising like frozen waves, forests that breathed, stars that danced, life in all its unfolding grace. We saw elves, firstborn of the children of Ilúvatar, and men who would come after, bearing gifts even we did not understand. He smiled faintly. It was beautiful. The smile faded slowly. And yet, Melkor desired it, not to cherish, but to master. He saw not the gift in creation, but the opportunity for power. And so, he descended. Gandalf paused. We followed. Not all of us. Some remained in the timeless halls, but others, we chose to enter Arda. We took shape. We became part of it. I was among them, though not as Gandalf. Not yet. I was a wind, a thought, a whisper among the leaves. I watched as the world was formed beneath the stars. He closed his eyes. The Valar, the powers, they shaped the land. Ole made the bones of the world, mountains and stone. Yavanna gave it growing things, trees and grass, and the whisper of green. Ulmo filled it with water and song. And Manwi set the winds dancing. Varda placed the stars, her hand lifting them into the void. It is her light that the elves still revere. The fire gave a gentle snap, casting shadows across his cloak. But Melkor came also. He destroyed as they built. He froze the waters. He tore up the trees. He cast shadow across the stars. And always, he sought dominion. Not partnership, not beauty, only control. Gandalf looked up at the night sky. Still, the world was made. Still, the light survived. And time began to move. He drew in a long, slow breath. We do not remember the first days as you do. For to us, time was not a river. It was a field of stars, infinite, and every step could be taken in any direction. But for those who woke within Arda, the elves, the dwarves, men, time was a path, a journey. The wizard was silent for a long moment. When the elves first opened their eyes, he said softly, they did so beneath the stars, and their first sight was of light, not shadow. They sang, oh how they sang, and the world knew joy. His voice faded almost to a whisper. But Melkor feared them. He could not create life, but he could ruin it. He captured many of them, twisted them, changed them into orcs, a mockery of beauty, a bitter echo. The flame wavered. It was then that the Valar chose to intervene. They went to war against Melkor, a war that shattered mountains, drained seas, cracked the very sky, and in the end, he was defeated. Gandalf turned his gaze again to the fire. Bound, imprisoned, cast beyond the world. But his shadow never fully left. It seeped into the cracks of things. It whispered in corners, and others listened. He breathed slowly. Sauron, one of his own, learned from him. And though he was less, he was cunning, patient. He waited. The fire had become low, glowing like the last heartbeats of a long day. These things I tell you not as history, but as memory, for I was there in part. I remember the music. I remember the fall. I remember the first light and the first sorrow. Gandalf let the silence stretch. There is something you must understand, he said. Creation is not war. It is not fire and breaking. It is song. It is harmony. And even in discord, there is a deeper pattern. One day, perhaps, it will all return to that first music. One day, the last shadow will be cast down, and all shall be unveiled. He stood, stretching slightly. The night had grown colder, but the stars remained, patient, eternal. He turned from the fire, gazing toward the dark sea. Sleep now, he whispered. The music still plays, far beneath the world, and if you are quiet, you might hear it. The fire had burned low, a bed of glowing embers humming quietly beneath the soft night sky. Gandalf remained by its warmth, his gaze drifting westward across the sea. The stars above shimmered in reverent silence, as if they too were listening. He sat still, wrapped in his cloak, and the silence between his words carried weight, like the breath before a hymn. I remember Valinor, he said at last. His voice was soft, filled with memory, both distant and painfully present. Not as you might remember a place you once visited, but as a child remembers the lullaby sung by a mother, long gone. It is woven into me. He did not look at the fire this time. His eyes remained on the horizon, where no land could be seen, but where his thoughts wandered far. Valinor, he repeated with the faintest smile. The undying lands, the realm of the Valar, the place beyond sorrow, beyond change. There, time does not gnaw at the roots of things. There, light is not chased by shadow. There, all is as it was meant to be? He drew a deep breath, and as he exhaled, it seemed the air carried with it the fragrance of distant blooms. I remember the trees, he said. Telperion, the elder, silver as moonlight woven into silk. Its leaves were like dew, and they shimmered with a light not of this world. And Laureline, younger, golden as the first dawn. Its glow warmed not the skin, but the soul. The two trees stood together in the heart of Valinor, giving light not by burning, but by being. His eyes shone with the reflection of memory. They did not cast shadows, he whispered, for in their presence there was no need to hide. All things grew openly beneath their boughs, and the very grass hummed with joy. When they shone together, their lights mingled, creating a moment of grace so perfect, even the Valar would fall still to witness it. He paused, lost in that vision. I would walk those gardens at dawn, though in Valinor, dawn is not a coming, but a state of being. I wandered the silent paths of Lorien, where dreams were born in quiet pools of starlight. The air was always soft. It carried the scent of Yavanna's gardens, of blossoms never seen in Middle-earth, pale translucent petals that opened only under the stars, singing faintly as they breathed. He smiled again, faintly, as if savoring a taste long missed. In the halls of Irmo, the Lord of Dreams, silence was a language. There, thoughts became images, drifting through the air like birds. The Valar did not speak as mortals do. They shared meaning in forms deeper than words. They were not gods in the way some think. They were caretakers, architects, guardians of what was beautiful. He lifted his hand, fingers curling slightly, as if holding something delicate. Varda, the star kindler, had eyes brighter than any flame. Her voice echoed with the tone of the first light. Elbereth, the elves named her, and even now they call upon her when the darkness presses close. Her stars were not placed by accident. Each had a name. Each had a purpose. He lowered his hand slowly, and Manwe, her consort, High King of Arda, sat upon Tanikitil, the tallest mountain. From its peak, the winds sang his will. He did not rule by command, but by listening. Even the birds brought him tidings, and the clouds bent their shapes in homage. The sea breathed beside the dock, and Gandalf's voice grew quieter. There were songs in Valinor that you cannot hear in this world, he said. Not because your ears cannot perceive them, but because your hearts are too full of motion. There, music waits. It does not rush forward. It hovers, like a sigh, just before the soul speaks. The fire hissed as a tiny ember collapsed. Ulmo, Lord of Waters, Gandalf said, never lived among the Valar in Valinor. He dwelled in the depths, but his music was always present, in the fountains of Tirion, in the rain that kissed the golden leaves of Lorelin, in the hush of streams that cradled starlight. He spoke not with words, but with longing. He shifted slightly, the wooden planks creaking beneath him. And Ole, the smith, forged wonders beyond imagining. Not for war, for art, for joy. Gems that held the laughter of fire, metals that rang like bells when struck with wind. The elves learned much from him, and from Yavanna, his beloved, came the forests of Valinor, tall and gentle, whispering songs in a language older than Elvish. A soft wind stirred, and Gandalf seemed to listen for a moment. In Valinor, he said slowly, Everything was alive, not just in motion, but in spirit. A stone knew it was stone and was glad to be so. A tree did not struggle to grow. It sang upward, and the sky sang back. He looked once more across the sea. It is hard, he admitted, to speak of that place without breaking it. Words are like nets. They catch the shape, but not the light. Valinor must be felt. It is not a land, but a harmony, a living chord woven through the soul. Gandalf was quiet for a time, and the silence around him deepened. "When I return," he said at last, "it will not be as I left. I am changed. I have walked through fire, shadow, and ruin. I have seen towers fall, and small hands carry great burdens. I have wept, and Valinor will know this. The light there will welcome me, but it will also ask, 'What have you learned?'" He did not sound afraid, only solemn. "I have learned that even the smallest kindness is a torch in the dark. That laughter shared in grief is a greater balm than silence. That courage often walks quietly beside despair and does not boast." His hand tightened gently on the end of his staff. "I will walk again beneath the trees," he said, "if only in dreams. I will smell Yavanna's flowers once more, hear the songs in Irmo's halls. Perhaps I will speak with Varda and thank her for her stars. Perhaps I will sit with Nienna once more and let her see what I have become." He looked down at the fire. "But I will never again be as I was. That part of me remains here, scattered like ash upon the wind." A pause. "And that is as it should be." The night held stillness now, as if even the world paused to listen. Gandalf rose slowly, his robe falling in gentle folds around him. "Valinor waits," he said, "not as an escape, not as a reward, but as a return, a place to rest, to remember, to become again." He turned toward the west, where the sea met the stars. "But tonight, I remain here," he said. "One more night with the fire, and the sky, and the memory of all I have loved." The embers glowed behind him, steady, like a heartbeat made of light. "Sleep," he said, "and in your dreams, may the light of the trees guide you." The wind over the harbor had changed. It no longer carried the sense of far-off gardens or the warmth of the remembered trees. It was sharper now, tinged with cold. Gandalf sat with his back straight, hands folded, the fire before him little more than a glowing memory. His gaze was distant, his voice lower, as if what he was about to say required reverence or caution. "There was one," he began, "who was greater than all others, most powerful of the Ainur, most gifted. His name was Melkor." He let the name fall like a pebble into a still pool. "He was mighty, glorious, radiant. In the beginning he sang louder than any of us. His voice was filled with depth and fire. He could bend harmony into beauty no one had imagined. He had insight and desire." Gandalf's brow furrowed slightly, but in that desire lay the seed of sorrow, for he wished to make, not merely to serve. He wanted to create life from his own thought, not from the music of Ilúvatar. And he became restless. He wandered the void alone, seeking the flame imperishable, the secret of true creation. The wizard's voice took on a quiet melancholy. "He never found it, for that flame dwells with Ilúvatar alone. It is the gift of life, and it cannot be stolen." He stirred the embers slightly with a branch. Melkor grew envious of the others. He watched as their songs built harmony, and he twisted his own melodies to counter them. Where they raised beauty, he offered power. Where they spoke in unity, he sang alone. And slowly, his pride grew. It filled him, consumed him. He looked again at the sea. He saw discord in the music. It was not merely opposition. It was defiance. He did not seek a different beauty. He sought dominion. He wanted the music to follow him. The stars shimmered above. Ilúvatar allowed this, for he knew what would come. He answered Melkor not with punishment, but with new music, deeper, richer. He wove Melkor's defiance into the whole. And when the music ended, Ilúvatar showed us the world it had formed. He sighed softly. It was beautiful still, but not perfect. It bore scars and wonder. It bore light and the promise of shadow. Gandalf leaned forward, his voice more intimate. Melkor entered the world with us, but from the beginning, he sought to bend it. While the Valar shaped land and sea, he destroyed. He raised mountains and shattered them again. He froze the waters, scorched the sky. He built great fortresses in the dark places and filled them with fear. His fingers tapped the side of his staff. He named himself King of the World, not Protector, ruler. And those who followed him, he corrupted. Maiar of great power, drawn by his might, became his servants. One among them was Sauron. He said the name without emphasis, like a cold fact. But Melkor, he became something else entirely. His light dimmed, then blackened. He gave himself a new name, Morgoth, the Black Foe, the enemy of the world. Gandalf's eyes glimmered in the firelight. I remember the terror of those days, the light of the trees extinguished by his hand, the theft of the Silmarils, the burning of ships, the oath of Feanor, the exile of the Noldor. The land itself groaned under his malice. His tone remained calm, though his words painted sorrow. Morgoth dug his stronghold deep beneath the northern world. Angband, it was called, the Iron Prison. From there he sent forth creatures of nightmare, dragons with fire blood, wolves with spirits of shadow, Balrogs once noble, twisted into flame and whip. He filled the world with dread. Gandalf's hand curled slightly into a fist, then slowly relaxed. There were wars beyond reckoning. Whole kingdoms rose and fell in the First Age. Great cities, like Gondolin and Nargothrond, perished under fire and deceit. Heroes rose too. Húrin, Túrin, Beren, and Lúthien. They fought not just with swords, but with hope. They pushed against the tide of ruin. He spoke the next names with reverence. And Lúthien, daughter of Thingol and Milian, danced into the heart of darkness itself. She faced Morgoth in his own throne room. Her song broke his walls of will. Her light pierced even his blackness. He let that image linger. But even such courage could not destroy him. Only the Valar at last intervened. They came in force from Valinor, and in the War of Wrath, they cast down Morgoth. His eyes turned again to the fire. He was bound in chains unbreakable, taken beyond the circles of the world, cast into the void. A silence, deeper than night, claimed him. Gandalf's voice was still, but evil does not vanish with its master. Morgoth's hatred poisoned the world. His shadow lingered, deep in the hearts of those who wished to rule. His most cunning servant Sauron remained. He sighed. Sauron learned well. He did not conquer with fire alone. He deceived. He seduced. And so the echo of Morgoth endured. The fire crackled faintly. I do not tell this to frighten you, Gandalf said. That age is gone, and Morgoth is gone with it. But the story matters, for even in the greatest fall, there are lessons. Pride untethered becomes destruction. Power unguarded becomes tyranny. Even the brightest can fall into shadow. if they forget to serve. He leaned back slightly. But also, in the darkest places, courage was born. Hope sang louder. Love did not break. He looked to the stars. There are those who say Morgoth will return at the end of all things, that a final battle will come, and Ilúvatar himself will answer. I do not know. I do not fear it. For every shadow, there has always been a light, the yea, that follows. He closed his eyes, and perhaps even Morgoth, in the deepest void, hears the echo of the first music. Perhaps he weeps, though he cannot remember why. Silence returned, save for the breath of the sea. Gandalf opened his eyes and looked once more at the flame. We are not meant to forget, nor are we meant to be ruled by fear. The memory of darkness gives shape to the light. He reached forward, gently placing a piece of wood onto the embers. Rest now, he said. The tale of Morgoth is done. Let it pass like smoke into the night. Let your thoughts drift to peace. He sat back, and the fire, newly fed, kindled softly once more, glowing like a quiet promise. Good night. The flames had grown stronger now, fed gently by Gandalf's hand. They danced with quiet vigor, casting shadows that seemed to curl and twist like ancient spirits, reawakened by memory. Gandalf sat motionless beside the fire, yet his mind moved swiftly through time, across mountains and seas, into the distant past, when the light of the two trees still lingered in memory, and the world was freshly wounded. The Silmarils, he said, his voice weighted with reverence and sorrow, were the greatest works ever wrought by elves, or any child of Ilúvatar, and perhaps they were also the greatest curse. He stared into the flames as if seeing something within them. They were born of wonder, not of war. Feanor, son of Finwë, was their maker. He was the most gifted of the Noldor, a prince of unmatched skill, his spirit like a flame too bright to endure. He captured the light of the two trees within 3 perfect gems, light made solid, living jewels. He reached into the fire with a long stick, drawing a glowing line through the coals. Those stones shone with their own fire, untarnished by time or shadow. The Valar themselves marveled at them. Yet Feanor grew possessive. He loved them not as a father loves a child, but as a master loves his power. He would not let them go. Not even the Valar could convince him. Gandalf's voice darkened. Then came Melkor. He had long envied the light, and when the trees were destroyed by his hand, with the help of Ungoliant, the spider of Unlight, only the Silmarils held their radiance, and so Melkor desired them above all things. A faint gust stirred the fire. He stole them. Slain was Finwë, the High King of the Noldor, and the Silmarils were taken to the dark fortress of Angband. There, he set them into a crown of iron that burned his flesh, yet he wore it with pride. He had become Morgoth, in truth, the Black Foe, and with the Silmarils upon his brow, he defied all. The wizard lowered his head. Feanor was overcome by fury. His grief twisted into rage, and in that fire he swore a terrible oath. He and his 7 sons, they vowed to pursue anyone who withheld the Silmarils from them, friend or foe, unto the ends of the world. It was a binding oath, a curse wrapped in words, and it would haunt the Noldor for ages to come. Gandalf closed his eyes for a moment. The Valar warned him. They urged patience, but Feanor led his people into exile, abandoning Valinor. In their haste, they came to Alqualonde, the swan haven of the Teleri, and when the Teleri refused to give their ships, blood was spilled. Elves slaying elves, the first kinslaying. The sea drank the cries of the fallen. The fire flared, And Gandalf's voice grew solemn. They crossed the bitter north. Many perished. And when at last Feanor set foot in Middle-earth, his wrath was unchecked. He struck swiftly at Morgoth's forces, and in the battle under stars, he drove them back. But pride is a poor shield. He was slain by Balrogs, his spirit departing in flame, leaving his sons to carry the weight of his oath. He sat in silence for a while, letting the names and deeds of old settle into the stillness. War did not cease. It grew, like fire across dry grass. Morgoth unleashed horrors beyond imagining. Dragons first walked the earth, not as beasts of rage, but of malice and cunning. Glaurung, the father of dragons, came forth, and with fire and fear, he shattered hope. Gandalf stared into the coals, yet there was resistance. The elves built great kingdoms. Nargothrond, hidden in the caves of the west. Gondolin, shining in secret beneath the encircling mountains. Doriath, guarded by the girdle of Melian. These were not just cities. They were havens of light against the long dark. His tone softened. And in the midst of this war, there arose tales of great beauty. Beren, a mortal man, dared to love Luthien, the daughter of Thingol, king of Doriath. Together, they did what none believed possible. They entered Angband, passed through dread and fire, and took a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. Beren lost his hand to a wolf, but love endured. Luthien gave up her immortality for him. Even death could not part them. He breathed slowly, letting that story rest. But the oath of Feanor remained. When the Silmaril came to Doriath, his sons attacked. Another kinslaying, another stain. The jewel passed on, never finding peace. It was like light wrapped in sorrow, burning all who held it. Gandalf stirred the fire again, the embers glowing like shattered stars. One by one, the sons of Feanor fell, chasing the light that their hearts could no longer bear. And in time, 2 Silmarils were lost. One cast into the sea, another into the earth. The last was taken by Erendil, mariner of the stars, who sailed into the heavens to plead with the Valar for aid. He looked up at the stars. They heard him. And in the final days of the First Age, the Valar sent forth their host. The war of wrath broke the world. Mountains crumbled, seas rose. Morgoth was defeated, cast into the void. But the Silmarils were gone, too hallowed, too burdened to remain. Gandalf fell quiet again. And so they endure only in story. And in the sky, Erendil's Silmaril still shines as the evening star. It is a light of hope, born of pain, not a treasure to be claimed, but a symbol of what must be remembered. He leaned back, his voice gentle. The fire that Feanor lit still burns in the hearts of many. Pride, passion, the longing to create, and the danger that such beauty brings. Yet even in all the sorrow they caused, the Silmarils were never evil. It was love, twisted by possession, that brought ruin. The flames flickered lower, and Gandalf's face softened. Let the tale of the Silmarils remind you, not all light can be held. Some must be shared. Some must be let go. He looked once more toward the west, and in letting go, perhaps, peace. The fire had grown quiet again, a bed of soft embers glowing like the last breath of some ancient star. Gandalf sat beside it, unmoving for a time, as though the weight of memory held him still. The wind had stilled as well, and the sea seemed to wait in silence, as if it, too, was listening for what would come next. There are cities, Gandalf said slowly, that do not fade from memory, even when their stones have long turned to dust. Gondolin is one of them. He gazed into the soft red of the fire, his face touched by flickering shadows. It was the hidden city, the last stronghold of beauty in a world darkened by war. Concealed within the encircling mountains, its white walls rose like a dream against the gloom of the First Age. Turgon, son of Ingolfin, was its king, and he ruled not with pride, but with hope. Hope that light could be preserved, even in secret. He let the silence stretch before continuing. Few knew its location. Few were permitted to enter. It was guarded by the mountains and the will of its people. There, the elves lived as if the shadow beyond the peaks did not exist. Music echoed in its halls. The fountain sparkled in moonlight, and its towers shone with a light not unlike the stars. He smiled faintly. I walked those streets once, long ago, and I remember the scent of the white trees in bloom. I remember the voices of children at play, the way the stones of the city felt beneath my feet, as though they carried an echo of something older, something sacred. The smile faded, but nothing in Arda remains untouched by shadow. Gondolin was betrayed. He lifted a small coal with a stick and watched it glow. Meglin, nephew to the king, born of light and darkness. His mother, Aradel, was of the Noldor. His father, Eol, of the dark woods, secretive, stern, and filled with bitterness. Meglin grew in Gondolin, and he loved it. But he also desired power, and he envied another. His brow furrowed. He loved Idril, the daughter of Turgon, but she loved Tuor, a mortal man sent by Ulmo with warning. Meglin's love turned to jealousy, and jealousy to treachery, captured by the forces of Morgoth, while seeking ore beyond the mountains. He gave up the secret of Gondolin in exchange for his life, and a promise that he would rule it after its fall. The fire hissed. Morgoth moved swiftly. In the deep of night, the mountains were breached. A host of orcs, balrogs, dragons, and foul things poured into the valley. The city woke to the sound of fire and steel. Towers burned. The sky turned red, and the people of Gondolin, who had lived in peace for so long, were thrown into despair. Gandalf's voice grew softer, sadder, but they did not surrender. The House of the Harp sang as they fought. The House of the Fountain, clad in silver, held the northern gate until it fell in flame. Glorfindel, golden-haired and brave, faced a Balrog on the mountain pass. Both fell, but his sacrifice saved the fleeing survivors. He paused. Idril had foreseen the danger. A secret way had been built beneath the city, leading to safety. And through it, Tuor led many out. Women, children, the wounded. Smoke rose behind them. Screams faded. Gondolin burned. His voice nearly failed him, but he continued. I remember looking back once, from the mountain's edge. I saw the white walls collapse. I saw the towers, once so proud, fall like trees in storm. And I felt the sorrow of it all. Not just the loss of stone and song, but the end of a dream. He sat in silence, watching the fire as though it mirrored that distant ruin. Gondolin was not just a city. It was hope, sculpted in marble, a prayer made architecture. It was the belief that beauty could endure, even in hiding. And when it fell, it felt as though a part of the world itself broke. His hand brushed over the wood beside him, but from its ashes came light still. Idril and Tuor's son was Erendil, the mariner, the one who would sail beyond the world, the one who bore a Silmaril into the sky. He breathed deeply. It is strange, isn't it? He mused. How even in the greatest fall, something can rise. That the end of Gondolin was not the end of hope, but its transformation. He tilted his head toward the sky. I speak of it now without the ache I once felt, like an old man touching a scar that no longer stings. Gondolin is gone, but it lived, and in its living, it left a song behind. The embers glowed more softly now, like the memory of lanterns at dusk. Let it be known, he said, that courage often sings louder when surrounded by fire, that even the brightest walls must fall, if they are to become foundations for something greater. Gandalf turned his face to the sea, and perhaps one day, beyond the circles of the world, Gondolin may rise again, not in stone, but in song, not in silence, but in light. He leaned back once more, and the fire, now low and warm, pulsed gently like the heart of a sleeping mountain. Sleep well, he whispered. You are safe now. Let Gondolin guard your dreams. The night deepened around Gandalf, wrapping the shore in a silence that felt more like memory than mere quiet. The stars above seemed less bright, or perhaps more distant, like old friends who no longer answered the call. The fire had faded to a glow, a gentle pulse of red and orange that cast no shadows now, only a quiet warmth against the sea wind. He sat alone with his thoughts, his eyes half closed, his breath long and even, as if the weight of what he was about to speak needed time to settle in his chest before being released. After the war, he began, his voice no louder than the rustle of a cloak in the breeze. After the great breaking of the world, after Morgoth was cast into the void, there was silence. He leaned forward, folding his hands over his knees. The Valar, in all their might, had intervened. They had brought down the enemy, shattered his power, and broken the lands beneath him. Beleriand, where so many stories had been born, was swallowed by the sea. Mountains fell, rivers changed their course, and the stars wept. He looked up into the night sky, as if searching for a constellation that no longer burned. But then they left. Not entirely, not with malice, but they withdrew, as if the world had become too loud, too broken, too sorrowful for them to bear. The Valar returned to Valinor, to the undying lands, and Middle-earth was left to mend itself. He paused. It is not easy to explain this silence. It was not abandonment. It was distance, a solemn watching, as if they feared that every touch, no matter how well-meaning, would leave more ruin than healing, and so they became quiet. Gandalf drew in a breath and let it out slowly. The elves still remembered them. Some sang their names. Others sailed west in search of their grace. But men were left with stories, whispers, and doubt. The stars remained. The seasons turned. But the voices of the Valar were no longer heard in wind or wave. His voice dropped even lower. I remember walking the forests then, after the War of Wrath. I remember the stillness. Trees that once sang now stood mute. Rivers that had once carried music now flowed with a kind of mourning. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, unsure of what would come next. He reached down and touched the edge of the dock, feeling the grain of the wood. Middle-earth was alone, and from that solitude came sorrow, but also resilience. With the Valar silent, the peoples of the world had to choose their own path. They stumbled, they fell, but they stood too. They learned, they endured. His eyes dimmed. There were those who cursed the Valar, who said they had abandoned their children, their stewards, that they had turned their backs on the pain they had left behind. And perhaps, in some hearts, they did. He closed his eyes. But I do not believe the Valar are cruel. I believe they grieved. I believe their silence was not punishment, but sorrow, a kind of mourning that words cannot express. And so they watched and waited. The sea murmured, soft and distant, like a lullaby nearly forgotten. "I have felt their presence," he said, "in the hush of snow, falling on a battlefield after the fighting is done, in the light that filters through the leaves when all seems lost, in the courage of a gardener who stood before the eye of the Dark Lord with nothing but a hope and a sword." He smiled faintly. "Their silence is not empty. It is full of watching, of trust. They gave this world to us, not to rule, but to tend, to shape, and yes, to suffer, but also to heal." He drew his cloak tighter around his shoulders. "There is a sadness in this silence, a longing, but within it, there is also freedom. The freedom to choose, to rise or fall by our own will. The Valar wait, I think, not because they have turned away, but because they believe in what we might become." He looked again toward the west. "I go now to see them once more, to walk the shores of Aman, to speak with Manwë, with Varda, with Nienna, to tell them what I have seen, what I have felt. Perhaps they will weep, perhaps they will smile, but I will go as I am, changed by this world, shaped by its sorrow and its joy." He reached out and stirred the embers one last time. "Do not fear the silence," he whispered. "It is not a void. It is a space waiting to be filled with kindness, with courage, with the stories we choose to write." He lay back against the dock, his eyes closed now. "Rest, little one. You are not alone. Even in silence, you are seen." And for a long while, there were no more words, only the murmur of the sea, the hush of the stars, and the quiet breath of a world listening to itself. The night carried a hush that felt heavier than before, as though the weight of old truths lingered in the air, wrapping the world in a quiet that was not peace, but remembrance. The fire burned low, more ember than flame, and Gandalf sat beside it with a stillness that seemed carved from stone. His eyes were distant, not from weariness, but from the gravity of the memory he now carried to the surface. "After the elves," he began, his voice barely more than a whisper, "came the second children of Ilúvatar, the race of men. Their awakening was not beneath the stars, but beneath the sun, and their fate was not eternal memory, but the gift of forgetting." He looked down at the fire, drawing his hand near to its fading warmth. "I have long pondered why men were not given the same endless life as the elves, why they were born to live swiftly, love deeply, and die early. At first, I thought it a cruelty, a punishment perhaps, or a flaw. But over time, I came to understand it is a gift." He paused, and the soft rustle of the sea answered. "For men live not for ages, but for moments, and in those moments, they can shape the world in ways that the long-lived cannot. Their days are few, but their will is fierce. They fall again and again, yet they rise. Each generation is a new chance, a renewal." He smiled sadly. "But their light, it flickers. And where there is flickering, there is the threat of shadow. Morgoth, though cast into the void, left behind more than ruin. He left his echo, his malice, a seed of darkness buried deep in the hearts of many, where pride, envy, and fear grow like weeds in a forgotten garden." Gandalf turned his face from the fire to the sea. "I have seen it, felt it, the whisper of Morgoth in the hearts of kings and beggars alike. It does not roar, it seduces. It tells men they are alone. That power is protection, that domination is strength. It is an old lie, and a clever one. He pressed his palm against the wood beneath him, grounding himself. Men were not there when the world was made. They did not sing in the music of the Ainur. Their song was separate, a hidden verse known only to Ilúvatar. That too, I once feared, that what I could not know might be dangerous, that their gift of death, their freedom from the circles of the world, made them strangers to all things eternal. He bowed his head. But I was wrong to fear them. Or rather, I was wrong to fear the unknown within them. For in that mystery, there is something beautiful. Men can be cruel, yes. They can fall faster than elves, for their flame burns hotter. But they can also rise higher, forgive more deeply, love more fiercely. His eyes closed for a breath. Yet the shadow persists. Always it returns. It creeps through cracks in the heart. It wears 1,000 masks. It does not need Morgoth to exist. It needs only fear, a hunger for control, a loss of trust. He opened his eyes and looked into the embers. I have walked many lands, spoken with many rulers. I have stood before tyrants who called themselves saviors. I have listened to whispers in dark corners, men speaking of purity, of order, of cleansing fire. And I have known each time that Morgoth still breathes in those lies. Gandalf's voice dropped even lower. Even Sauron, his greatest servant, began with a desire for peace. He wished to bring order to a world that he saw as broken. But order without compassion becomes tyranny. Peace without freedom is only silence. He lifted his gaze to the stars. There are still those who resist. Always, there are hearts that shine through the dark. Men who choose hope when fear is easier. Women who stand alone when others kneel. Children who sing in ruins. And that is why I never gave up on them. Not once. He smiled again faintly. I feared the shadow would return. I always did. And it did. Through rings, through war, through whispered words. But I also believed it could be overcome. Not with armies, but with courage, with sacrifice, with love. He grew quiet for a while, and the waves filled the silence. When I first saw Frodo, he said, I thought him small, too small to bear such a burden. But then I remembered, it is not the size of one's frame that determines strength. It is the weight of one's choices. He stirred the embers again, and he chose to carry that weight, not for glory, not for power, but because he believed it must be done. And in him, I saw what Ilúvatar must have seen in men, the strength to do what is right, even when there is no promise of reward. Gandalf looked to the sky. The elves are leaving. The dwarves have hidden themselves in their mountains. But men remain. They inherit the world, and with that inheritance comes both peril and promise. He placed another piece of wood on the fire, and it caught slowly, softly. I speak now not to judge them, but to honor them, for they are fragile, but in their fragility lies their beauty. In their brevity lies their urgency, and in their sorrow, their songs are born. He laid back slightly, resting on one elbow. Let no one say the second children were a mistake. They were a gift. And though the shadow endures, so too does their light. A flickering light, yes, but even a flicker can guide a traveler home. He closed his eyes. Rest now. The world turns, and in the turning new stories begin. The night had grown still. Even the wind, once murmuring over the waters of the harbor, now slept. The stars overhead burned on in quiet dignity, distant and unchanged, as if they watched over the world without judgment. The fire at Gandalf's feet was little more than a few glowing coals, their light pulsing faintly like the breath of an old memory. And yet, despite the deep stillness around him, the wizard's voice rose once more, calm and even, as though he had waited long to speak this part. "There is a tale," he said softly, "older than most, remember. A prophecy whispered in the West and held in secret among the wise. The end of days, the final song, the Dagor Dagorath, the last battle." He paused, not in fear, but in reverence. It is not a tale told often, not because it is forbidden, but because it is distant, a shadow on the far edge of time. It speaks of a day when the world shall be broken and remade, when Morgoth will return from the void, and all the hosts of the Valar shall rise against him, the light and the dark brought to their final reckoning. Gandalf looked up at the stars. Many do not believe it will come. Others dread it. But I do not fear it. The end will come as all things do, not as a punishment, but as a closing of a story. And every ending, if told well, is also a beginning. He leaned back slowly, his cloak wrapping gently around him. It is said that Turin Turambar will rise from the halls of Mandos, that he, the mortal who bore the weight of doom and tragedy in the First Age, will wield his black sword once more, that with his hand, the final blow will be struck. Morgoth, the enemy, will fall forever. His voice was steady, and after the battle, Arda will be remade. The music will play again, a second song, deeper and fuller than the first. The discords of the past will be healed, the wounds closed. The world will shine as it was meant to be, unmarred, whole, in harmony. Gandalf lowered his gaze to the embers, now flickering faintly. I have pondered what role I would play in such a time, whether I would return, a voice once more among the Ainur. But I believe my part in this song is already sung. I have walked the long road. I have lit what lights I could. Others must carry the fire now. He smiled gently. There is peace in that, in knowing when to step back, in trusting that those who follow will find their way. The world is not without its guides, not without its strength, and perhaps it is the strength of the smallest hands that will turn the tide just as it has before. He reached toward the last glow of the fire, warming his fingers. I think of Frodo, of Sam, of all those who stood not because they were fearless, but because they could not bear to do otherwise. They would not think of themselves as warriors of prophecy, but they bore more weight than many kings. The coals dimmed. If the Dagor Dagorath comes, it will not be with horns and thunder. It will begin in the hearts of those who choose hope, who choose love in the face of ruin, who choose to build even when all is falling. That is how the end will come. Not with fire, but with light. Gandalf's voice fell to a hush. And yet, it is not for me to see it. My road ends here, not in battle, but in rest. I have given all I could. Now the tale passes into other hands. He looked to the sea, where the horizon barely glowed with the memory of coming dawn. Let them write the next verse, he said. Let them sing the songs that have not yet been sung. My voice has grown old, but theirs will rise fresh and strong. The last ember faded to ash. And if that great day comes, he whispered, I will listen from afar, not with pride, but with peace. For in the end, we are all notes in a song too vast to hear in full. But if we each sing true, then the harmony will endure. Gandalf closed his eyes. Sleep now. The battle has not come. There is still time. Time to rest. Time to dream. Time to be kind. And with that, the night held its breath, and the silence returned, not empty, but full of unseen promise. Dawn came gently. The stars, once bright and countless above the harbor, had begun to dim, folding themselves into the quiet light of morning. A soft glow touched the edge of the sea, silver first, then gold, as though the horizon itself was exhaling after a long night of memory and story. The last shadows retreated, not in fear, but in quiet surrender, making way for the coming day. Gandalf stood beside the fire, now long gone to ash. Only a soft spiral of smoke curled upward, carrying with it the last warmth of a night filled with remembrance. He had not spoken in some time, and the silence that followed his final tale had settled gently around him, like a mantle. He reached down, slowly, and took up his staff. The familiar weight met his hand, as if it had been waiting. Then, with calm deliberation, he drew his white cloak over his shoulders. The fabric shimmered faintly in the growing light, no longer merely a robe, but a symbol of completion, of peace, of journeys walked and stories told. He looked once more toward the sea. There, waiting just beyond the dock, was the ship. White sails, quiet crew, and a bow carved with stars. It waited without urgency, as if time had bent itself around this moment. Gandalf stepped forward. His boots moved softly against the worn wood of the dock, each step slow, not because of age or reluctance, but with reverence. Behind him, the world he had served lay in slumber. The hobbit holes in the hills, the tall towers of men, the silent trees of LOTR. He carried them all with him, not as burdens, but as blessings. He reached the edge of the dock, where the ramp to the ship began. He paused. The sea air touched his face, and the rising sun brushed against the side of his staff. He whispered then, to no one and to everyone, "Not all flames are meant to go out. Some wait, to shine where no shadow falls." His voice carried only as far as it needed to. Then he boarded. The ship shifted slightly as he stepped aboard, a soft creak of timber greeting him like an old friend. No horn sounded, no fanfare, only the hush of water, the cry of a gull in the distance, and the breath of the wind. The sails lifted, the ropes were drawn, and the ship turned west. From the shore the dock stood empty now, except for the fading outline of footsteps and the last curl of smoke. The light of dawn climbed higher. In the stillness that followed, a sense of something sacred remained, not of loss, but of return, as if a page had been turned, not closed. The sea would carry Gandalf to Valinor, to the undying lands, where the light does not falter, and the air remembers the first song. But he left behind more than stories. He left behind hope. You, who have listened so long, now stand in that quiet. You have walked beside him, heard the music, felt the sorrow, held the flame. So now let go. Let your eyes fall gently closed. Let the stories settle in your heart, like soft snow on a quiet field. There is nothing more to do tonight. Rest, for this tale, long and winding, has come to its gentle end. And in its ending, it offers you peace. Not because all battles are over, or all questions answered, but because even in the shadow, there is a light that does not fail. You carry that light now. A soft breath, a slower beat, the weight of dreams on your shoulders. Sleep well, dear listener. The fire has burned low, the night has done its part, and a new dawn waits gently, just beyond your dreams.